Well, first off, thank you, Freddie. um, and thanks to the sponsors and the organizers of this event today. Let me tell you, they've done a lot of great work to get a good group of people together and to get all of you here. So thank you to the sponsors and organizers. And let me just ask a very simple question to begin. How many of you like the ocean? All right, my kind of audience. Any scuba divers out there? A couple? How about snorkelers? Oh, you guys are great. Perfect audience. Well, I put up some pictures there. You know, if I was going to take some snapshots from my career, that's what they would be. I have been incredibly lucky to, as Freddie said, I've actually lived underwater for 2 weeks at a time. I've gone down in a little submersible. I taught oceanography on a tall sailing ship. I lived in the Bahamas, I've lived in the Caribbean, and I've been able to go back to the Galapagos numerous times to do research. So what I thought I'd do today is talk to you a little bit about, actually there's some of the themes that are in my most recent book called Chasing Science at Sea, but I think these themes are about my career in ocean science, my colleagues' career in ocean science, and I think you will be able to relate to them in terms of your life and maybe, hopefully, your career. Well, one thing that we all look for is inspiration. Where do we find inspiration to become an ocean scientist, to study robots, to chase storms? Well, for ocean scientists, myself and my colleagues find wonder under the water. And one of my most favorite creatures in the sea are reef squid, shown in the pictures here. Now, if you're on a coral reef diving, you stay very still. If you're lucky, a reef squid will come up to you, and not just one reef squid. Usually it's like they're in a game of perpetual follow the leader, because it's not just one, it will be a line of squid. And if you sit there, the squid will come up to you, and the leader of the pack will do this with its tentacles, kind of to check you out. And guess what all the others do? They all waggle their tentacles. The lead squid will change color from transparent to polka dot to red. And guess what? All the squid behind it do the same thing. And the squid actually have one of the most advanced eyes in the animal kingdom. And you literally feel like, as you're watching it, it's watching you. But one of the other things that inspires me is not just this is just an amazing creature. I mean, it can hover, it can jet propel, it can change color in a second. But I compare it to myself underwater, and man, I'm really lame. I can't hover, I can't jet propel, and I certainly can't change color like the squid. And so it inspires me to try and understand how animals have evolved to be so well adapted to the sea. So really this idea of wonder and discovery is something that ocean scientists find inspires them. Well, in ocean science, just like a lot of careers, we have to overcome obstacles, but I bet some of those obstacles are not typical for many careers. For myself, I was very lucky in the 1980s, while I was just in between my master's and my PhD, a professor asked me if I would like to go to the Galapagos to help him study the impact of El Nino on coral reefs. You can imagine how quickly, yes, take me. Well, we ran into a few obstacles that were rather unexpected. In science, we're told that you come up with a hypothesis, you write a proposal, you get funding, you go out and collect data to meet that hypothesis. It doesn't really work that way. You might get funding, but when you go out into the field, you discover all sorts of new things that you didn't expect, and you run into obstacles. Well, one of the funniest obstacles in my time in the Galapagos was, and I was working with Peter Glenn and Josh Feingold at the time, see that bottom right-hand corner, that sea lion? Turns out that the females and the pups thought that our camera gear and our survey gear were fodder for tug-of-wars. They were the perfect thing to play with. So every time we'd put a camera down on the sea floor, a sea lion would come and try and take it. Who planned on that, writing my proposal? And then one time, I'll never forget this, one time I was working and I was on scuba tanks and my buddy was in front of me, and all of a sudden something started tugging my fin. And you can imagine I kind of did one of these, what's back? And it was a sea lion. The females and the pups just want to play all the time. Now you have to be careful of the bull sea lions. They are territorial and they will let you know when they want you out of the area where they are. And we got chased out of the water where we had to survey, but they're big, powerful animals, and they've got really big teeth. So we got out quickly. One of the other adventures I had at that time in the Galapagos was, you see the picture in the upper left, that's a place called Bartolome Island in the Galapagos. It's a very famous, a lot of times when you see a picture of the Galapagos, it comes from Bartolome. And we hitched a ride with the Galapagos National Park Service to do a survey of this bay right here of the corals, because a survey had been done before, and we were going back to see how many corals there were they alive, were they dead, were they being overgrown, what had happened since the 1982-83 El Nino. So the captain of the ship, who didn't speak any English, but was a very proud and very kind and very interested in what we were doing, he brought us in a little boat from the bigger boat onto this beach. Now, he first kind of looked at us like we were crazy because you're on the equator, so it's very hot. But we had to get all of our equipment over to this side. So what did we do? We put our wetsuits on, we put our scuba tanks on our back, and we hiked over this island to this side. Captain already thought we were nuts. We got to the very top of the crest of that island. We looked down into the bay where we had to survey, and guess what we saw? Sharks. There was a school of circling Galapagos and hammerhead sharks. Now, of course, then the captain looked at us and said, "You're really crazy." That's when I looked to Josh Feingold, who I was working with, and I said, "Oh, this is your project, really. You go first." And he goes, "Oh, no, ladies first." So we hiked down to the bay, and we got in the water, and truthfully, there's so many fish for those sharks to eat in the Galapagos, they wanted nothing to do with us. So they all swam away, and we just got to work. But here's what happens in the Galapagos. When you're out diving and a sea lion, they kind of do a flyby. This is what it looks like. They then circle back, and I swear to you, they come up and they basically hover in the water right in front of you, and they blow bubbles in your mask. Basically saying, "Ha, ha, ha, look what I could do. You don't belong in the water." I mean, they really make you feel inept in the ocean. Well, one of the things that when you spend a lot of time out on, under, in the sea, you really learn to respect nature and the power of not only the sea, but the interaction between the ocean and the atmosphere. And on my very first trip with Sea Education Association in this tall sailing ship, I was teaching oceanography on board. We were leaving Woods Hole, headed to the Caribbean in October, and a late season hurricane developed. Here's a ship track, and this is the track of the hurricane. Now, when you're in the field sometimes, just like in life, you have to make some big decisions. The captain and I stood over the chart table one night at midnight, and we recognized the storm had changed its track, and we were on a collision course. And we had to decide, do we turn tail and go